Captain Lee Minho pulled his hood lower as he entered Station Omega's busiest cantina. The place buzzed with activity, traders arguing over cargo prices, mercenaries boasting about their latest jobs, and information brokers whispering secrets in dark corners. But as soon as the other patrons noticed him, something changed. Conversations grew quieter, eyes turned away. A Catherian weapons dealer actually moved to a different table entirely. Minho found his usual spot in the far corner, a table positioned so his back faced the wall and he could see every entrance. He ordered his drink and kept his gaze fixed downward, studying the amber liquid as if it held the secrets of the universe. "There he is," whispered a blue-skinned Altarian to his companion, "the human who never looks. I heard he killed 12 hegemony soldiers without touching a weapon," the other replied, leaning closer. Never even raised his head to look at them. Minho almost smiled at that. The number grew every time someone told the story. Last week it had been 8 soldiers. Next month it would probably be 20. A massive Bendari enforcer lumbered past, his heavy footsteps making the floor vibrate. The alien was easily 7 feet tall and built like a tank, with arms thick as tree trunks and scars covering his green hide. But when he noticed Minho sitting there, he actually changed direction to avoid walking too close to the human's table. That was the power of reputation, fear of the unknown. If only they knew the truth. If only they understood that his downcast eyes weren't a sign of mystery or arrogance, they were protection. For everyone around him, 20-3 years ago. When Minho was barely 19, he had volunteered for an experimental program. The Colonial Defense Force needed better soldiers, and they thought they had found the answer in neural enhancement technology. The procedure was supposed to give soldiers faster reflexes and better tactical awareness. It had worked. Too well now. Whenever Minho made direct eye contact with another living being, his enhanced brain automatically analyzed them as a potential threat. In less than 2 seconds, his mind would map their body structure, identify weak points, and calculate exactly how to kill them. 17 different methods, ranked by efficiency and likelihood of success. He couldn't turn it off. He couldn't stop it from happening. The enhancement had become a curse that forced him to see death in every face he might look upon. The cantina's main screen flickered with new job postings, escort duties, cargo protection, bodyguard work. Most of it was routine stuff that paid poorly and offered little excitement. Minho wasn't really looking for work anyway. He had enough credits saved up to last several months, and he preferred the quiet life these days. That was when she approached. Ambassador Park Juan moved through the crowded cantina with the confident stride of someone used to diplomatic halls and formal ceremonies. Her dark blue uniform was perfectly pressed, and her credentials gleamed on her jacket like small stars. She was younger than most ambassadors, probably in her early 30s, with intelligent eyes and an expression that suggested she was used to getting what she wanted through negotiation rather than force. She slid into the chair across from Min without waiting for an invitation. Most people wouldn't have dared to sit so close to him, but ambassadors were different. They were trained to show no fear, even when they probably should. "Captain Lee Minho," she said, placing a datapad on the table between them. "I have a job for you." Minho kept his eyes on his drink. "Not interested. You haven't heard the details yet. Don't need to. Whatever it is, find someone else." Ambassador Park leaned forward slightly. "Simple escort mission. 3 days to the neutral zone. My team and I need safe passage to a peace conference. Standard diplomatic immunity applies. No combat expected." Those last 3 words made Minho pause. In his experience, the missions that promised no combat were always the ones where combat was most likely to happen. Peace conferences, especially, had a way of turning violent when different species tried to negotiate with each other. "Why me?" he asked, still not looking up. "There are plenty of other security contractors on this station. Cheaper ones too." because the other side specifically requested that no enhanced humans be present at the negotiations. They're afraid of what your people might be capable of. Park's voice carried a hint of amusement. Having you escort us to the meeting sends a message. It shows we're serious about protecting our interests. Minho finally lifted his head slightly, though his eyes remained focused on the datapad rather than the ambassador's face. The mission details were simple enough. Transport Park and her negotiation team to a neutral space station near the border between human and hegemony territory. 3 days travel each way, with a few days on station for the actual talks. Payment? He asked. 50,000 credits. Half now, half when we return safely. It was good money. More than good, actually. The kind of payment that suggested the job was more dangerous than the ambassador was letting on. I'll think about it, Min said, sliding the datapad back across the table. Ambassador Park stood up, straightening her uniform. My ship leaves in 6 hours, Captain. Docking Bay 17. I hope to see you there. As she walked away, Minho noticed that several other patrons watched her go with obvious interest. News traveled fast in places like this, and by tomorrow, everyone would know that someone had offered the mysterious human a hyping job. He finished his drink and left money on the table. Outside the cantina, the station's artificial day cycle was shifting toward evening, and the corridors were filled with the usual mix of travelers, workers, and those who made their living in the spaces between stars. Minho made his way back to his small apartment, thinking about the ambassador's offer. 50,000 credits would set him up for months of quiet living. But peace conferences were dangerous things, especially when they involved species that had been shooting at each other for decades. Still, Ambassador Park had seemed confident that no trouble was expected. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this would actually be the simple job she claimed it was. Deep down, though, Minho knew better. His enhanced instincts were already telling him that this mission would end in blood. The only question was, whose blood it would be. The transport ship New Soul cut through hyperspace like a silver needle, its engines humming with quiet efficiency. Minho stood alone in the observation deck, watching distant stars blur into streaks of light outside the reinforced windows. The sight always reminded him of tears running down glass, though he kept that thought to himself. 3 days into their journey to the neutral zone, he had managed to avoid most contact with Ambassador Park's team. There were 5 of them, in total, the ambassador herself, 2 junior diplomats, a communications specialist, and a cultural advisor who spoke 12 different alien languages. They seemed like good people, dedicated to their work of building peace between hostile species. That was exactly why Minho tried to stay away from them. The observation deck was his refuge during long space flights. Most crew members avoided it, claiming the view of hyperspace made them dizzy or gave them headaches. Minho found it peaceful. Out here, surrounded by nothing but empty space and distant light. He could almost forget about the burden he carried behind his eyes. His reflection in the viewport showed a man in his early 40s, though the stress of his condition had aged him beyond his years. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples, lines around his eyes from squinting to avoid direct contact, shoulders that carried an invisible weight. He looked tired because he was tired. 23 years of carefully watching where he looked, of calculating safe angles and safe distances, of living in constant fear of accidentally meeting someone's gaze. The memory came without warning, as they always did. He was 19 again, lying on a medical table in the Colonial Defense Center, while Dr. Kim Soo-young made final adjustments to the neural interface device. The procedure room was clean and white, filled with the quiet hum of advanced medical equipment. Young Minho had been excited, honored to be chosen for the experimental program that would make him a better soldier. "This will change everything," Dr. Kim had said, her voice filled with scientific enthusiasm. "The neural enhancement will connect directly to your visual cortex and tactical processing centers. You'll see patterns other soldiers miss, identify threats before they become dangerous, predict enemy movements with unprecedented accuracy. She had been right about all of that. What she hadn't predicted were the side effects. The first incident happened during a routine training exercise. 2 weeks after the surgery, Sergeant Baek Doyon was running the new enhanced soldiers through combat scenarios, testing their improved abilities. Minho had been performing well, his reaction times faster than ever. His awareness of battlefield conditions, sharper than any normal human could achieve. Then Sergeant Baek called him over for individual evaluation. "Look at me, soldier," the sergeant had commanded. "I want to see if the enhancement affects your ability to maintain eye contact during debriefing." Minho had obeyed without thinking. He lifted his head and looked directly into Sergeant Baek's eyes. The change was instant and terrifying. His enhanced brain exploded with tactical analysis. In less than 2 seconds, Minho's mind had mapped every detail of the sergeant's body structure. Old knee injury from a training accident 5 years ago. Strike there to disable mobility. Slightly slower reflexes in the left hand, due to nerve damage. Exploit that weakness. Neck vertebrae aligned at a specific angle. Precise pressure applied there would cause immediate unconsciousness. 17 different ways to kill. Sergeant Baek downloaded into Minho's consciousness like a computer virus, complete with probability calculations and efficiency ratings. His enhanced mind ranked each method by speed, stealth, and likelihood of success. The worst part was that he couldn't stop it from happening. The analysis ran automatically, beyond his conscious control, turning a respected instructor into nothing more than a tactical problem to be solved. Minho had stumbled backward, horrified by what he was seeing. "I'm sorry," he had whispered, unable to explain what was happening inside his head. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, ... Sergeant Baek had been confused but concerned, thinking the young soldier was having some kind of medical reaction to the enhancement procedure. He had no idea that Minho was seeing him as a target to be eliminated, rather than a human being to be respected. The next week had been a nightmare of medical examinations and psychiatric evaluations. Minho tried to explain to doctors and researchers what the enhancement was doing to his mind, how it was turning every person he looked at into a potential victim. They ran test after test, trying to understand why the neural interface was producing such unexpected results. Dr. Kim Soo-yang had been devastated when she realized what her creation had done to him. The enhancement couldn't be removed. The artificial neural pathways had grown too deep into his brain tissue, becoming part of his basic mental architecture. Any attempt to extract them would cause permanent brain damage or death. "We'll find a way to fix this," she had promised, tears in her eyes. "We'll find a way to turn off the combat analysis function while preserving the other benefits." But they never did. Years of research and experimentation failed to solve the problem. The military eventually classified the project as both their greatest success and their most tragic failure. Minho could see tactical solutions that no other soldier could imagine, but he could never look directly at the people he was supposed to protect. Soft footsteps on the deck behind him brought Minho back to the present. He could see Ambassador Park's reflection approaching in the viewport, though he kept his own gaze carefully focused on the streaking stars beyond the glass. "The crew is getting nervous," she said quietly, stopping a few feet behind him. "They've been talking about you, sharing stories they've heard." "Stories keep people alive," Minho replied. "Fear makes them careful." "Is that what you want? For everyone to be afraid of you?" Minho was quiet for a moment, watching light bend around the ship's hyperspace field. "It's better than the alternative." Ambassador Park's reflection moved closer. "The alternative? People getting hurt because they think I'm safe to be around. Is it true?" she asked. "What they say about your eyes, about what happens when you look at someone." For the first time in hours, Minho almost smiled, though there was no humor in it. "Would you really want to know, Ambassador? Would you really want me to explain exactly what I see when I look at another person? She was quiet for a long time, considering his words. Finally, her reflection nodded slowly. Maybe not, she admitted. But I think I understand why you carry that burden alone. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the universe flow past the observation deck windows. Two people sharing a moment of understanding across the vast darkness of space. The attack came from nowhere. One moment the new soul was traveling peacefully through hyperspace, and the next moment, massive gravity beams were dragging them back into normal space. Alarms screamed throughout the ship as the pilot fought desperately to regain control, but it was already too late. The Gemini dreadnought off the port bow, the communications officer reported, his voice tight with fear. They're demanding immediate surrender. Minho felt the familiar cold sensation in his stomach that always came before violence. Through the ship's viewports, he could see the enemy vessel, a massive warship bristling with enough weapons to destroy entire planets. Its dark hull was covered with battle scars and the painted symbols of conquered worlds. This wasn't supposed to happen, Ambassador Park said quietly, staring at the enemy ship. We have diplomatic immunity. They can't legally detain us. Legal doesn't matter out here, Minho replied, checking his sidearm even though he knew it would be useless against what was coming. The hegemony makes its own laws. Within minutes, their ship was captured and pulled into the dreadnought's docking bay. Minho kept his head down as armed Catherian soldiers boarded their transport, their energy weapons humming with deadly charge. The aliens were tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 eyes that glowed with inner light. Their armor was black and covered with spikes, designed to look as intimidating as possible. Out, everyone out. The lead soldier barked in broken human speech, move now or die. The diplomatic team was herded through corridors that seemed designed to terrify prisoners. The walls were lined with skulls from dozens of different species, trophies from the hegemony's many conquests. Some of the skulls were human, which made Ambassador Park's team walk faster, despite their diplomatic training. Minho studied everything as they walked, noting guard positions and weapon placements while being careful not to make eye contact with any of the soldiers. His enhanced mind automatically calculated escape routes and tactical advantages, though he knew their situation was nearly hopeless. They were outnumbered 50-1, surrounded by enemy forces, and trapped inside a warship in deep space. The War Council chamber was enormous, designed to make visitors feel small and powerless. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and the walls were covered with holographic displays showing the hegemony's military victories. At the center of it all sat General Vexstar on a throne carved from black stone. The general was massive, even by Catherian standards, easily 8 feet tall, with arms like tree trunks. His 4 eyes burned with intelligent cruelty as he studied the human prisoners. Battle scars covered his gray skin, and his armor was decorated with the symbols of his rank and the medals of his victories. So, General Vexstar's voice rumbled, like distant thunder. These are the mighty humans who dare to request peace talks. His burning gaze swept over the diplomatic team before settling on Minho. At least this one knows his place. He keeps his eyes down like a proper servant. Ambassador. Park stepped forward, her diplomatic credentials displayed prominently on her uniform. General Vexstar. I am Ambassador Park G1 of the Colonial Defense Forces. We are traveling under official diplomatic immunity to attend peace negotiations. You have no legal right to detain us. The general laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Legal rights? You humans still think your laws matter out here? The only law in this sector is hegemony law, and I am that law. We came here to discuss ending the war between our peoples. Ambassador Park continued, maintaining her professional composure, despite the obvious danger. Surely even the hegemony can see the benefits of peace. Peace is what the strong give to the weak when they surrender, Vexstar replied. He gestured toward Minho with one clawed hand. At least your bodyguard understands proper respect. He knows to keep his eyes down in the presence of his superiors. Minho remained perfectly still, hands clasped behind his back, head bowed. Around him, he could sense the fear radiating from the diplomatic team. They were trained negotiators, skilled at handling difficult situations, but this was beyond their experience. "Look up, human," General Vextar commanded suddenly, his voice sharp with authority. "Show proper respect to your betters by meeting my gaze." Minho didn't move. He knew what would happen if he obeyed that command, and he wasn't ready for that. "Yet," I said, "look up," the general roared, rising from his throne. The entire chamber fell silent except for the hum of energy weapons being charged by nervous guards. "Or perhaps you need motivation." He gestured toward Ambassador Park. "Shall I start executing your companions until you find your manners, Ambassador?" Park stepped forward bravely. "General, please." There's no need for the guard's weapon struck her in the head before she could finish speaking. She crumpled to the floor, blood running from a cut on her forehead. The other diplomats rushed to help her, but more guards pointed their weapons at them, forcing them to stay back. Something cold and deadly settled in Minho's chest. He had spent 23 years avoiding this moment, 23 years keeping his curse carefully contained, but watching Ambassador Park fall, seeing the fear in the faces of innocent people who had only wanted to build peace between hostile species, something inside him finally snapped, slowly, deliberately. Minho raised his head and looked directly into General Vextar's blazing eyes. His enhanced mind exploded into activity. The analysis was instantaneous and complete. Catherian physiology mapped down to the cellular level. Four-chambered heart, located behind the central chest plate. Exoskeleton weak points identified at every joint. Neural cluster positioned directly behind the primary eyes. A single precise strike would cause instant paralysis. 17 different methods of killing. General Vextar downloaded into his consciousness. In 2.3 seconds, ranked by efficiency and probability of success. His enhanced brain calculated angles, force requirements, and timing with mathematical precision for exactly 2.3 seconds. Death itself stared back at General Vextar through human eyes. Then Minho looked down again. The general, completely unaware of how close he had just come to dying, laughed triumphantly. "Much better. Now you show proper respect." He settled back onto his throne with obvious satisfaction. "The executions will begin in 1 hour. Perhaps watching your companions die will teach you humans the price of challenging the hegemony." But as guards moved to secure the prisoners, none of them noticed the slight smile that touched Minho's lips. The general had made a fatal mistake. He had forced Minho to see him as a target, and now Minho knew exactly how to kill him. The holding cell was a metal box with no windows and only one door. It was built to hold prisoners much stronger than humans, with walls thick enough to stop plasma blasts and a floor that could handle the weight of creatures twice Minho's size. 6 Catherian guards stood outside, their energy weapons pointed. Through the bars at the diplomatic team. Ambassador Park sat against one wall, pressing a medical pad to the cut on her forehead where the guard had struck her. The bleeding had mostly stopped, but she looked pale and shaken. The other members of the diplomatic team huddled together in the opposite corner, whispering quietly among themselves about their chances of survival. Dr. Yang Minyuk, the mission's specialist in alien biology, kept checking his wrist chronometer every few minutes. 51 minutes now, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think they're serious about the executions?" "They're serious," replied Kim Ji-hoon, the team's communications expert. "The hegemony doesn't make threats they don't intend to carry out." Minho sat alone in his corner, head bowed as always, but his mind was far from quiet. Those 2.3 seconds of eye contact with General Vextar had triggered his enhancement in ways he had never experienced before. Usually, his curse analyzed 1 person at a time, mapping their weaknesses and calculating how to kill them. But in the War Council chamber, surrounded by so many potential threats, his enhanced brain had gone into overdrive. 23 enemy combatants. Every guard, every officer, every armed soldier in the room had been catalogued and analyzed in that brief moment of direct eye contact. His mind had mapped their positions, identified their weapons, noted their armor's weak points, and calculated 41 different tactical approaches for eliminating them all. The enhancement had done its work whether he wanted it to or not. Now he carried the blueprint for a massacre in his head, complete with timing sequences and probability calculations. "Commander Lee," Ambassador Park said quietly, drawing his attention back to the present. Despite her injuries, her voice was steady and professional. "I know what they say about you, about what you're capable of." "Just stories," Minho replied, not lifting his head. "My grandfather served in the colonial wars," she continued. "He was there during the Battle of New Harmony, when the experimental soldiers first saw combat. He told me about Project Mirror, the enhanced humans who could see death itself in every opponent they faced." Minho's shoulders tensed slightly. Very few people knew the real name of the enhancement program, and fewer still understood what it had done to the soldiers who volunteered for it. "He said they were the most effective fighters humanity ever created," Ambassador Park went on, "and the most tragic, because they couldn't turn off what they saw when they looked at people." "Your grandfather was a wise man," Minho said quietly. "You're one of them, aren't you? One of the mirror soldiers?" Before Minho could answer, the cell door hissed open with a sound like escaping steam. General Vextar strode into the small space, followed by 6 heavily armed guards. His 4 eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction as he looked down at the human prisoners. "Time for a demonstration," the general announced, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "We'll start with the female diplomat. A public execution should send the right message about human weakness." 2 guards moved toward Ambassador Park, their energy weapons trained on her chest. She didn't try to resist as they grabbed her arms and pulled her to her feet, but Minho could see the fear in her eyes despite her diplomatic training. "This is unnecessary, General," she said, maintaining her professional composure even as they dragged her toward the door. "We came here in good faith to discuss peace between our peoples." "Peace is for the weak," Vextar replied. "Your destiny will show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge hegemony authority." As the guards hauled Ambassador Park past Minho's corner, she turned her head and looked directly at him. "Sometimes mercy is choosing when not to look away," she whispered. Her words meant only for his ears. Minho closed his eyes for a single heartbeat. In that moment of darkness, he made his choice. When he opened his eyes again, he was looking directly at every enemy soldier in the corridor beyond the cell door. His enhanced mind exploded into activity like a computer virus spreading through a network. Guard positions analyzed, weapon orientations mapped, structural weaknesses in their armor identified, movement patterns calculated, tactical sequence initiated, 23 targets, 41 possible approaches, optimal solution selected. "You should have kept your eyes down," Minho said quietly, and moved. What happened next lasted exactly 47 seconds, though it felt both eternal and instantaneous to those who witnessed it. To the hegemony guards, it seemed like pure chaos, a human shadow flowing between them with impossible speed and precision, striking at pressure points they didn't know existed, exploiting weaknesses their armor wasn't designed to protect against. To Minho, it was simply following the tactical blueprint his curse had drawn for him. Strike the first guard's weapon hand to disable his rifle. Duck under the second guard's plasma blast while driving an elbow into his solar plexus. Spin left to avoid return fire while grabbing the third guard's helmet and twisting it hard enough to damage the neural connections in his neck. His enhanced brain guided every movement with mathematical precision. Each strike landed exactly where calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimum permanent damage. He moved through the enemy formation like water flowing around rocks, always in the right place at the right time to avoid incoming attacks while delivering his own. General Vextar roared orders at his remaining soldiers, but they were too confused and scattered to mount an effective defense. The human was everywhere and nowhere, striking from angles they couldn't predict and disappearing before they could respond. When the silence finally fell, 23 hegemony soldiers lay unconscious, or worse, scattered throughout the corridor. General Vextar himself was still alive, but completely paralyzed from Minho's precise strike to the neural cluster behind his primary eyes. Exactly as his enhancement had calculated, Ambassador Park stared at him with a mixture of awe and horror, her diplomatic training struggling to process what she had just witnessed. "How many?" she asked in a whisper. Minho looked down at his hands, refusing to meet her gaze. "All of them," he replied quietly. "I saw how to kill all of them." The corridor was silent, except for the soft hum of the ship's life support systems and the quiet groans of wounded soldiers. In 47 seconds, one enhanced human had neutralized an entire platoon of elite hegemony warriors. But as Minho helped Ambassador Park to her feet, he felt no satisfaction in his victory, only the familiar weight of carrying a power too dangerous to use and too necessary to abandon. 3 months had passed since the incident aboard the hegemony dreadnought, but the story had taken on a life of its own across the galaxy, and trading posts from the core worlds to the outer rim. People whispered about the human who had single-handedly defeated an entire hegemony war council without firing a shot. The details changed with each telling. Some said he had used ancient martial arts. Others claimed he possessed supernatural powers. The truth, as always, was both simpler and more complicated than the legends. Minho found himself back on station Omega, but this time he wasn't hiding in the shadows of the mercenary cantina. Instead, he sat in a clean, bright office in the administrative sector, facing Director Choi Yun-seo, across a metal desk covered with official documents and personnel files. Director Choi was a small, efficient woman in her 50s who had spent most of her career managing colonial defenses, more unusual projects. She understood better than most what it meant to deal with soldiers who carried burdens that normal people couldn't imagine. 17 more requests this week, she said, tapping the stack of files between them. Enhanced soldiers from across human space, all asking to be transferred to your new training unit. They've heard about what you're trying to do here. Through the office's large viewport, Minho could see the practice yard 3 floors below. 12 soldiers moved through combat exercises in perfect silence, their heads carefully downcast, as they practiced techniques designed to disable rather than kill. Each one was enhanced like him, carrying the same neural modifications that turned direct eye contact into an involuntary analysis of how to end another person's life. "What do you tell them?" Minho asked, watching the soldiers work. "When they first come here, what do you say to help them understand?" "I tell them the truth," Director Choi replied, "that you found a way to live with the enhancement instead of being destroyed by it, that maybe they can too." One of the soldiers below stumbled during a training exercise, his partner immediately reaching out to steady him without looking up. Kim Dae-ho, barely 22 years old, had volunteered for enhancement during the last year of the war. Like all of them, he had expected to become a better soldier. Instead, he had become something that couldn't look at another living being without seeing exactly how to kill them. "They're learning," Minho observed. Dae-ho helped Lee Wanbin without making eye contact. 3 months ago, he wouldn't have risked getting that close to another person. "Is that enough?" Director Choi asked. "Teaching them to help each other, while keeping their eyes down." Minho was quiet for a moment, considering the question. Through the viewport, he could see more soldiers arriving for the afternoon training session. Some were veterans like himself, enhanced decades ago during the early experimental programs. Others were younger, products of the military's attempts to refine the neural interface technology. All of them shared the same burden, The curse of seeing death in every face they might meet. They need to understand that the enhancement doesn't define them, he said finally. It's something that happened to them, not something they are. The killing calculations, the tactical analysis, that's just information their brains process automatically. What matters is what they choose to do with that information. A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry to the office. Director Choi pressed a button, and Ambassador Park Ji-won walked in, looking much healthier than the last time Minho had seen her. The cut on her forehead had healed completely, leaving only a small scar hidden by her hairline. Ambassador, Director Choi said, standing up. Thank you for coming. I know how busy you must be with the peace negotiations. Not too busy to check on an old friend, Ambassador Park replied, settling into the chair next to Minho. How are the new recruits working out? Better than expected, Minho said, still watching the soldiers train below. They're starting to trust each other, which is the hardest part. When you can't look at someone without calculating how to kill them, building relationships becomes ... complicated. Ambassador Park nodded thoughtfully. I've been following the reports. The hegemony is taking the peace talks seriously this time. They specifically requested that enhanced humans not be present during the negotiations. Afraid we might accidentally start another war? Minho asked. Afraid they might not survive if they make the wrong diplomatic mistake, she replied with a slight smile. Your reputation has grown considerably since our little adventure. The story of the human who disabled General Vexstar and 23 of his best soldiers without killing any of them has made quite an impression. Director Choi gathered up the recruitment files. I'll leave you two to catch up. The new training schedule needs my approval before tomorrow. She paused at the door. Minho, the military is impressed with your progress here. There's talk of expanding the program to other stations. After she left, Ambassador Park and Minho sat in comfortable silence, watching the enhanced soldiers practice their careful dance of controlled violence below. Each movement was precise, calculated to disable rather than destroy, to protect rather than eliminate. Do you ever regret it? Ambassador Park asked, eventually. Taking on this responsibility, training others to carry the same burden you do. Min considered the question, watching Kim Dae-ho help another soldier adjust his stance during a defensive drill. The young man's eyes remained fixed on the ground, but his movements showed growing confidence in his ability to work alongside others, without risking their safety. Ask me in 20 years, he said finally, when I see whether these soldiers can find peace with what they are. For the first time in months, as he watched his students learn to be human despite their enhancements, Minho almost believed he might be ready to meet her eyes when she asked that question again. Below in the practice yard, 12 enhanced soldiers continued their training, learning not just how to fight, but how to choose when not to fight. In a galaxy that had seen too much violence, perhaps that was the most important lesson of all. The deadliest humans in known space were learning that true strength lay not in the killing blow they could calculate, but in the wisdom to keep that calculation to themselves.